We will be back on. And they'll start popping in a little bit here too. So, let's see how long it takes to connect. Anyway, yeah, we might start seeing some people pop back in over on the YouTube side because we'll get some commentary in here. We'll see what goes. Yep, we're connected to YouTube. So, well, I'm not talking to anybody over on YouTube yet, but what's that?
I'm just sharing that one.
All right. Yeah, because we'll do a little bit of commentary for a little while. I don't want to stay up too late, but it's also only 9 o'clock here, not 10 o'clock. And I know it's 10 o'clock for you, but we'll take some commentary and we'll talk about that. I'll actually retweet out what you just sent out, too. As soon as I get the...
That was very simple, and I didn't even use your handle or anything. I just boom, boom, you know? I didn't want to be gone for too long. Miss your face.
Nice. Let's... this back out. I don't know if it's going to be the same link though. That's the thing.
No, I retweeted the one. I saw the notification. I have my notifications on for your when you come on YouTube. So I just use that one. Boop, boop.
All right. So, all right, we've got that. We've got that. And yeah, let's talk about what happened here. So I'll just go through some of the commentary that came up while we were off, including some of the Nightbot stuff here, which the YouTube stuff is going to come back off of here. But I know the Chill Anarchist asked about the COVID-19 hate crime legislation, which that has to do with the Asian violence that everyone's afraid about. So...
Hear sound now. Okay, you moved a little there.
Okay. I must drop connection here a little bit as we're connecting over to the YouTube side. But we're back. We're ready to go. Chilaga says, was that the State of the Union? Yeah, that was pretty much the State of the Union at this point.
Called the State of Dementia?
Yeah, that's what I call the stream, just for the fun of it. Let me drop this volume back here a little bit because I can almost not hear you over it.
It's a trickle-down stream.
There you go. What was your takeaway from this?
I think I heard a lot of platitudes. I didn't hear a lot of about what... I heard some ideas that sound very nice at first blush, but the only numbers I heard had nothing to do with how efficient it'll be and what bang for the buck you're going to get. I mean, of all the terrible things the government does, I'd say that investing in infrastructure, investing in jobs is probably pretty, low on the list of horribleness. I would even say that it's almost good sometimes. But, we've seen the track record of when you try to stimulate the economy this way, what are the end results? What are the end numbers? You got a mile of road. Did you pay $60 million for that mile of road? Did you did you spend $500,000 per $40,000 job that someone spent like a year and a half working and then were unemployed again? What are the metrics we're working with? We also saw the fear mongering again, and the desire that even as he spoke, at least he gave lip service to the idea that we need to be competitive and that we need to take China and the threat of of them using unfair trade practices and subsidies, etc. He spoke to that, but he at the same time, what I keep coming back to is you were distracting ourselves with this stuff about white supremacy being a big deal in this country and about racism. I mean, look, I'm not denying that there is racism and that there's also, sometimes people don't know when they're being racist, right? They have the wrong expectations, but honestly, half the time that there's racism, it comes in the form of low expectations, and I think that we should, I don't want to divide into classes either, but let's go ahead and invest in vocational training, etc. for people who can't afford it, but let's not divide everything by race. Let's not I think that the energy that's being expended on this stuff is downright silly. There are hateful people. There are people who have evil in their hearts, but most Americans do not. And the pretension that every time there's a conflict or a misunderstanding or something like that, or some criminal has something bad happen to them, that it has to do with race. No, That's totally inappropriate. It's a distraction, and we're becoming less and less a serious people. We've grown soft with the luxury of being able to confuse ourselves with things that don't matter. Well, now that the economy's totally screwed up, and it's going to get more screwed up, by the way, when all these band-aids come off, which they will have to.
Yeah.
I mean, think about how many people are going to, who've decided, made a conscious decision not to make less money by staying on unemployment. When that ends, how many people? It's gonna be like musical chairs. Maybe you time it just right and you get a job right before, but there are going to be people left with no chair, and then when you get the $15 minimum wage coming into play, there's going to be even less chairs.
Well, and that's one of the problems too. And I mean, when we look at something like that, once we throw the minimum wage up, I mean, before the commie coup, and this is important to point out with this too, before the commie coup, how many people were actually working for under $15 an hour? You almost couldn't find a job like that unless you were in high school or going to work for the local Dairy Queen. They just about, if you're waiting tables somewhere in the Midwest or working at some fast food joint or something else, for the most part, anything else you did was up over that mark because people were fighting over workers, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not in that situation anymore. We're not.
So
people are fighting over jobs, not workers.
Time to be doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And timing is going to be the big part of this. I mean, I remember this was a last-ditch effort. I remember the last big minimum wage hike when we got to $7.25. I was living in Mass at the time, which was the point where I was making the state minimum wage, which was slightly below $7.25. And then I got a raise right before. I actually got away because I was working in a grocery store. I was working for $10 an hour at a mechanic shop, and then I was making the Mass minimum wage, which was $7.15 at the grocery store because of the way my school schedule worked. I needed to have two jobs. I didn't get a raise with the mechanic shop because he was cheap. But with the grocery store, I had just gotten a 50-cent raise immediately before the law went into effect for federal, which Massachusetts came up to $7.25, but then I went out to my boss and I said, hey, look, I just got a raise and now, here I sit. What do I do now? And, then he bumped me up and he got me up to where I was 50 cents above what the new minimum wage was.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, yeah, jobs are fighting over workers right now, not the other way around. And now once you're going to start implementing this in, where, this guy who's just starting out.
Certain jobs won't exist for that criteria.
Mm-hmm. And then your McDonald's and your Walmarts, they can afford the hit.
They can also automate. They can also automate. I mean, when he was talking about companies not paying taxes, right? Some of this has straightforward to do with if you invest and maybe you want to tweak how those subsidies are worked, or maybe you want to get rid of them. Mm-hmm. Either way, it's like if my company has 100,000 employees and made $1 billion extra in net last year over what what we expended. I might just want to invest in some automation, and I'm going to write it off of my taxes. I'm going to spend half that $1 billion. I'm going to spend $500 million on my my new automation plan, and I'm going to get to amortize it, or I'm going to get to write it off. And as long as per worker replaced, it's more than it's less than 2 years of pay per machine that replaces a person. I'm probably making a good investment, and then I have the government subsidizing it by making that a tax break, as opposed to distinguishing. Oh, I would rather that you invest in a person, or whatever. So I mean, it's just, don't go pretending that someone's cheating if they're using the system that you've been involved in creating for the past 5 decades.
Yeah. And that's a big part of this too, and that's what we pointed out. I mean, we can sit back and I don't know if you've noticed on how I set up Contemporary in the morning every day, but I try very hard not to talk about the Donald anymore because he is nothing at this point. He really is.
I'm glad there's finally some paper from the press, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's how I set myself up away from the mainstream press. I forget where I was going with that. Oh, well, I mean, we opened up at the beginning of this, and we sat back, and, what's the first thing he did? He starts blaming the chaos in America on the previous administration. That was the opening of the speech. How bad the
states were the ones
was.
that closed down. The states were the ones that closed down. He gave them freedom to do so. Maybe he should have been more authoritarian in the way that he dealt with the executives and the legislatures of these states. Maybe he should have said, this is the government's role, the federal government's role. But he gave them leeway, and states that decided to treat their citizens like adults who can make their own decisions did reasonably well. And the other states, such as my own, have had problems.
Yeah.
And here in New York, and you look at California, and these Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles, Gavin Newsom, the governor, these people seem to be like getting off on hurting people. It's terrible.
Well, and I mean, California is recalling their Democrat governor, who is Nancy Pelosi's nephew, by the way, over what happened with the COVID lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad it got in California.
People will only take so much shit. Even people who are in the cult will only take so much shit.
It's okay. I remember where I was going when I was talking about the last guy for a second.
Not Trump.
So
yeah,
no, about Trump. When I was bringing up Trump and the fact that I try not to talk about him, but I mean, if you think about what goes on with this too, because we could rather, we can't anymore because he's not the president anymore. Well, we could give Donald a little bit of credit for, if he screwed up something procedurally, which he did a lot, because he hasn't been, that was essentially his first run with government. This guy, and you brought it up numerous times in the speech, he is the system in the systemic racism because he's been there, as you keep pointing out, for 5 decades.
Mm-hmm.
He is the system. It's like what Palpatine said at the end of Revenge of the Sith. I am the Senate. He is the system.
Mm-hmm.
Fully and embodied.
Mm-hmm.
And yet he'll come back and rail against the way the United States used to be. You can't blame everything on 4 years of one businessman from, where is he from, Manhattan?
Yeah. Well, his family, I think his family originally was from Queens, but they like Fred Trump did a lot of development up in Queens, and then they moved their operations more upscale, and the Donald was much more into the very high end properties. I actually have a Fred Trump property around the corner that I used to live in. It wasn't under his ownership anymore. It was actually, I believe, it was given to a nonprofit at one point because Fred had been involved in some racist and other not so good things. I'm saying Fred Trump. I'm not saying anything about the Donald in particular instance.
I think it's funny what they tried to paint on Don for 4 years.
What?
I just think it's funny what they tried to paint on Don for 4 years. And were you just saying that Fred was involved in some racist stuff?
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you can give him a little bit of leeway on top of all this because he's coming at this outside of the procedure and outside of the boys' club.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that was always one of the things I kind of wondered. Obviously, we don't want to work too far down to the previous administration, but I did always kind of wonder about the balance between bringing in swamp creatures to try to, make things work, and how much they're influencing him versus him influencing them. You know what I'm saying?
I think they did go a little both directions on that. I really do because, that's what they do. Swamp's gonna fucking swamp.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that we need to, I think that we need to engage in the issues like immigration that he brought up, and infrastructure, and look, these things, there are going to be changes. There are going to be changes afoot. We can't just put our heads in the sand. If he's making the right changes, or if there's room for influence, we do need to let him know that there's more than one voice in the room, and that what would effective immigration reform look like. And that's not a very straightforward thing. No. I personally think that we need to get rid of per country caps. We need to get rid of that. We need to look at people as people. And why would India, which is a very large country with plenty of dumb people and plenty of smart people, plenty of people in between, right? Why would their cap be significantly smaller in comparison to their population versus a country with less than 1 million people? There are countries with less than 1 million people that have you can bring up to 10,000 people a year into the country, and yet a country with a billion people, it's not X times as many people. That it doesn't make sense to have caps. It makes sense to look at the merits or demerits of candidates to be here, and maybe we should make the immigration system somewhat more self-funding. There are people who pay big money to come into this country. Mm-hmm. Maybe we need to expand that class of immigrant. There's any number of factors to look at. We also have to look at why the people who are not bringing as much to the table would be seeking to be here, right? People who require asylum from violence, there's some merit to that,
Yeah.
But people who are coming here specifically because of the welfare state, well, close the spigot.
Well, and one thing that was brought up on the immigration discussion was the fact that, he got up there and said, and we don't have to worry about what's going on at the southern border and how bad we don't have enough of a wall for that, because most of the illegal immigration is people who overstayed their visa, which is statistically true.
Yeah,
but that doesn't
becoming
change
more
the
of a mess. That's not how it's happening.
That doesn't change the fact that you have millions of people in cages packed in, thousands, not millions, thousands of people in cages packed in like fucking sardines in Donna, Texas.
You also look down in San Diego, where homeless folks were kicked out of a homeless shelter to allow in the migrants. That is literally not America first. That is literally not these people who are in dire straits in their lives. Well, at least they're getting kicked out to San Diego, though. It'd be quite a different thing if they were in Wisconsin or New York or Boston or something like that in the middle of winter or something like that. But yeah. San Diego, I guess if you're gonna be homeless, might as well be 68 degrees every day. But
if I had to be homeless, I'd like that.
Yeah. But we do. You don't have to be inhumane to look at things in a way that's going to be more efficient for everybody, and to also look at trying to have solutions that work better. Our immigration system is messed up because you look at it was designed to be run by bureaucrats. It was designed to be inefficient, and our borders were practically nothing back in the day. Then back in 1980, the same fellow that had been in charge of the Marines in Vietnam came to be in charge of our border controls, and he actually took the job seriously. And that's when we started having problems of folks that used to be migrant workers getting stuck on one side or the other of the border, sometimes on this side of the border, where they used to be very seasonal, and suddenly, the going wasn't good to go back home or to be able to come back if you left. So you got to look at what works, and there was a change in enforcement without a change in policy. anyways, I went on a little bit of a tangent there.
Oh, it's fine. My representative has put out a statement over on Twitter. I want to read that for you from the office of Brian Style, who is another corporate fucking shill anyway, but at least he's a red corporate shill and not a blue corporate shill. So, of course, he's going to come in and weigh in on this. From Janesville, Wisconsin, Congressman Brian Style, Wisconsin 01, released a statement on President Biden's address to Congress. We all should be more concerned about President Biden's actions tomorrow than his words tonight. For the past 99 days, President Biden has promised unity and bipartisanship. However, his policies and actions have been anything but. Policies that eliminate job opportunities, bail out mismanaged states, and increase taxes do not help families and workers. We need realistic proposals to address the needs of American people, not inefficient, oversized proposals that waste our limited dollars. My priorities are getting our way of life back, creating good-paying jobs, and providing targeted investments in infrastructure, said Style. And I like the way that he puts that, too, when he talks about this, because when we look at what is actually going on with this, when we actually look at the situation that we have here, yes, Joe Biden can come up and stumble and stutter his way through all these pretty words that make all of his progressive base feel really good. But in reality, what have we seen? We've seen more job-crushing regulations that come back out of here, more jobs that are possibly going to be going overseas.
How about that Keystone XL? Are we going to give that another go?
Yeah, exactly. The Keystone XL. Plus, he's coming up and saying he actually does need to build the wall, in spite of campaigning on the fact that we don't need a wall. We need just throw that fucking border open.
There's actually a variety of environmentalists that has a kind of puritanical asceticism to them that specifically wants to avoid technological improvements and other ways out, that specifically desires a change to our way of life and a lessening of our quality of life. And that's a real problem within the environmental movement. There's a lot of division because there are people who are trying to come up with solutions, to say, hey, here's how we can clean the air, here's how we can do this better, here's that kind of thing. And they're looked down upon by the other faction who look at it in like a moralistic, like, I mean, there are obviously moral issues to destroying the planet if you're really destroying the planet, but who look at it in terms of you need to suffer in order for this to work.
Yeah, so, and some of the stuff they're bringing up, and I work around transport vehicles. Plus, I grew up on the farmlands. I know what it takes, and what kind of slim profit margins farmers are working on, and what sacrifices they're doing to make sure that we have enough food in this country. If you get rid of the industrial farming by equipment, because you can't have your fossil fuels on the farm anymore, without the fertilizers because they might hurt the environment, we're going to have to reduce the population of this planet by a lot.
Well, yeah. Well, there are a lot of people also. They're still like on that population bomb thing. Remember the population bomb, the book from the 70s. And the thing is that we had a generation of improving health at the same time as we still had the traditions of the less developed countries, where you literally had to have more kids. Twofold. One was for having enough of them survive. And another was inefficient agriculture, that you needed to have a lot of manual labor around the farm. Now, you had improvements in agriculture, more so here in America, but still overall around the world, you've had improvements in agriculture, and also you've had more of our products getting to people, mostly through the free market, or the free market, but, through markets that people were buying and selling as they saw fit, and so more food became available in places that were less hospitable. So you didn't need as many of those children, to till the land or what have you.
Right.
And you were also finding more of the next generation were having more economically efficient jobs that could help them make money in their not so great farm economy. and you had lower death rates. You had improving health. You had a lot of good American food coming to help improve their health, and you had a lot of entrepreneurship that allowed individuals and their families to improve their quality of living and to access to healthcare and stuff like that without so much government interference and in places throughout the world. And and therefore you suddenly were having people survive, and so suddenly that's where you get the big boom. And then you get people saying, I don't think I need, the next generation is saying, I don't think I need as many kids. And now you guys, we're coasting, we're around like, it was like, we're like here-ish. It's going to go like up a little bit, and then we're going to be flat.
Well, I mean, even to look back at, what the population trends have been, and then I think we're going to start closing it out after this here, but I just, I point out the fact that, you look at some of the, like you said, the generations where the health started improving and all your kids started surviving. My dad's got a friend a few years older than him who's got 13 brothers and sisters. In fact, I know both Jerry and I can't think of the other guy's name right now.
Patrick.
That's not Patrick, but God, what is his name? Justin. Jerry and Justin are both, like, Justin is the youngest one out of 13 kids from there, and I've only met the two of them, and then they married two sisters who were working with my dad at the time. That's the only reason I know those two. But that's 13 kids, and all 13 of them survived. My dad's family had 6 kids, and they lived in the city. And that's back in the boomer generation. My mom's got 3, a brother and 2 sisters, so she's got 3 siblings. That was still a big thing towards even right at the very end of the baby boom. My mom was born in 60, so I think 62 was the end of the baby boom. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but I think 62 right. Is when it turns over to Gen X, 62 or 63, something like that. So with that, you start to see these big families, and then you come into the millennial generation. I don't know how it was on Gen X, but you come into millennials, my generation, where most of your families have 2 or 3. They don't have a single one more. It's just 2 or 3. Your average is 2.5 kids. Or now to where my generation is starting to reproduce, and even starting into Gen Z. What do they have now? 3 abortions and a dog.
I have 1 daughter. My brother has a son. My wife's brother and his wife have a daughter. And I don't foresee any of us adding. So who knows?
All right. But I think we are going to wrap it up at this point, because I have to get in bed in 20 minutes because I still have contemporary to do in the morning. So I think we're going to change up the song. We're going to let you sell your wares and head on out of here. So let's come out of the Pretzel Rocks, which is still awesome, and throw the familiar tones up there instead. So why don't you tell everybody here where they can find you and where they can follow you at, and then we'll call it a night. Thanks for coming by the way.
What?
Thanks for coming by the way. I know it was last minute.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm at Quest Fanning on Twitter. I talk a lot about what you've heard us talking about tonight. I also talk quite a bit about homeschooling and the experience we're having with that. Again, at Quest Fanning on Twitter.
All right. You have any other upcoming projects coming up here? Anything that you're scheduled to do, or just a bunch of last minute stuff that you're going to get talked into at the last second?
Well, I actually am planning to make some videos about, related to homeschooling topics coming up soon, but no specific date on that.
All right, we will keep posted on that and watch for that as well. And you have permission to post, shout your stuff in my Discord as well, so they can find you over there once you get started off. So absolutely do that. And as for me, I'm gonna head on out of here myself. I'm gonna get to bed because contemporary comes really, really early in the morning, and I'm still trying to move to that 7 o'clock start time. So come back and join me in the morning for this, where we will be discussing more of the headlines that surrounded this and what happened with that. Otherwise, we'll be back here later on in the week as well, so come and join. And also make sure you hit up the Freedom Scoop Media Group. I know I played over a couple of them as well, so it's what happened, but this is a special edition, and I wanted to talk about it and catch it live as well. So we will see you in the morning for more contemporary. Otherwise, you guys take care, have a good night, and we will see you next time.
Good night.